Edinburgh, Scotland is one of Europe's truly great cities, a place noted for historic sites and modern culture that makes it one of the most popular destinations in the world.
Are you ready? Yes.
Your visit to Edinburgh could be done comfortably in 3 days. On day 1, Royal Mile and Castle. Day 2, the busy shopping district of the New Town, historic neighborhoods, and the National Art Museum. Day 3, to the Royal Yacht Britannia at Waterfront, Leith, National Museum of History, and free time. Of course, in between all of these wonderful attractions, your main activity is just the sheer pleasure of walking around in this beautiful city. The main street that visitors love to see is the Royal Mile, loaded with shops, restaurants, statues, monuments, and great old buildings, and lots of street entertainment to please the crowds. The pub culture is alive and well here, a great place for a drink and to meet some locals. You can eat in a fancy restaurant from a variety of international cuisines, or go casual with fish and chips, and you can even stand up on the street and eat it like these young locals do. Fish and chips has been a standard meal in Great Britain for over 100 years, and still very popular today. You can find it all over town. Perhaps not the healthiest meal, but very tasty. And you don't have to dress up for dinner. It seems that the Royal Mile is just one restaurant after another, mixed in with a few shops and old historic buildings. It's just the place to hang out when you're in Edinburgh. Very often you will hear the characteristic music of Scotland. The Civic Chambers were originally built as a stock exchange for the merchants of Edinburgh, but curiously they decided they'd rather work outdoors, and so they never took it over, and it became a government building. This was one of the most densely populated communities in all of Europe about 300 years ago, and it's still standing today. Edinburgh could be considered one of the world's oldest modern cities because 500 years ago, people there lived already in dense neighborhoods of high-rise apartment buildings. Back in the Middle Ages and by the 17th century, apartments commonly reached 12 stories or even 18 stories high, of course with no elevators, and not much plumbing, so waste was tossed out the window. The original density is preserved, making fascinating labyrinths for strolling. One of the delightful and defining characteristics of the old town, and particularly the Royal Mile, are the many alleyways that branch off from it. These are narrow lanes. They're called a close or a wynd or a courtyard. And they say there are about 50 of these little lanes branching off from the Royal Mile along its entire length. And generally they are open to the public, so it's really fun to explore. However, many involve steep staircases since the old town is built on a hill. They're perfectly safe but a little steep, and because they're narrow, it might be a good place to get close to some locals. Notice the steep angle you probably don't want to run or even walk up. This Royal Mile neighborhood is certainly the most popular place in town, but you want to get beyond this one street to see the rest of the city as well, as we're going to do now, and we'll come back later and show you more of the Royal Mile and carry on into the evening with the pub scene. Several major streets and many small alleys branch off from the Royal Mile. Cockburn is my favorite. Cockburn Street is another one of those fun places that you want to come back to several times in your visit. It has a gentle slope and delightful curve outlined by tall buildings on both sides and lots of restaurants along the way. And you'll find a number of unique little shops here that are fun to browse through. It's one of the main streets that connects the old and new towns, and there are some little side alleys you might want to explore, all of which creates a very interesting and friendly atmosphere. With nice weather, you're going to see lots of people sitting outside eating or just passing the time. And it's not just for visitors, it's popular with locals. The name is spelled Cockburn, but it's pronounced Cockburn. It's the kind of street you might easily overlook in your travels, but it's worth exploring. With that gentle S-curve, Cockburn Street has a very functional, gentle gradient. Makes it easier to walk up and down the steep hill. It's worth repeat visits during different times of day as it takes on different lighting and character. It's a colorful place, and Edinburgh has many more of these fascinating kinds of streets. Cockburn Street was created in the mid-19th century to slice through those steep, narrow alleys and connect the two sides of town. This overview on the map of Edinburgh gives you the basic look at the division into old and new, with the Royal Mile running right through the middle of the old town. With Princess Street Gardens in between the old and new towns, which is where we're taking you next. There's also the Edinburgh Castle up on the hill that we cover in our other movie about Edinburgh, along with the Royal Yacht Britannia. You'll see that from the castle terrace there's a magnificent view of the gardens and the new town beyond. Looking back at the castle from the gardens, you also have a fine view of the art museum we'll be taking you into later in this episode. And we'll find other rewarding views of the castle as we look back up while walking around inside Princess Street Gardens. You'll find that these gardens are another one of the great highlights of the city. It's the most popular outdoor gathering space in Edinburgh. On a nice sunny day, there's lots of people out sunbathing and relaxing. Princess Street Gardens are a delight to stroll through. You don't want to just look at them from the street. Get on down into the pathway and enjoy the floral displays. Sunny weather always brings out the local crowd. Among the public monuments, you'll find the Scots-American War Memorial that commemorates World War I, donated by Scottish Americans. And the Bronze Pig is a monument to Polish soldiers from World War II who adopted him. Before the gardens were created, there was a man-made lake here called the Norloch, and it was used for swimming and boating. And that lake was used for testing if you were a witch. They tied up the suspected witch and threw her in the lake, and if she drowned, then that proves she was not a witch. If she survived, she used witchery to get out of the lake and was then convicted and executed. In the 1600s, King James burned 300 women as witches. Originally created as a private park, it was not open to the public until 1876. The gardens were designed for the wealthy people who lived next to them, and they were supposed to be private gardens for them. They'd pay £1 for the key. But the locksmith who made the locks in the gates sold extra keys for a little extra profit so everybody could get into these gardens. You'll often run into street musicians as you're walking around in the city, and it's always fun to stop and give them a little listen, give them a tip, a variety of kinds of music. Later on, we'll hear some bagpipe rockers. Scottish National Gallery is an excellent fine art museum that we'll take you into in a little while, but first we're stepping into the new part of town and a walk along a major shopping promenade. Next to the gardens, you'll find Princess Street. It's the main street of downtown modern Edinburgh, always a busy place. It's got department stores, a lot of little shops, and a wide sidewalk to handle the crowds. You'll find it's a great place to spend your money and purchase authentic woolen goods. The most famous store in Edinburgh is Jenner's Department Store, which is the oldest department store in the city. Dates back to 1838. And of course, this is a very reputable place to do your shopping. The Grand Hall of Jenner's is such a famous spot. It's a tourist destination in itself. You might never realize from the outside that you think it's just another shop front, but by all means, step inside and explore Jenner's. As we show you here the variety of kinds of things that the visitor and the locals alike are shopping for here. Lots of woolen goods, and they've got souvenirs, of course, postcard racks, book racks, everything you could imagine, all under one roof on the main street, Princess Street. They've also got 4 different places to eat, a couple of restaurants and a coffee bar and a wine bar. The restaurant is very popular with the locals. It can be self-service or sit down and order off a menu. And there's an upscale food market in the food hall. all of which makes a nice break from the busy street out front, and then plunge back into the crowds. Extra busy today because it's a Saturday afternoon in the middle of May on a warm, sunny day, so everybody's out enjoying this spring weather. This busy shopping street is not named after a female princess. It's named for two sons of King George III, thus called Princes Street. There's a relatively new light rail tram service running right down the middle of Princes Street, and there are lots of public buses and tourist double-decker buses, and Waverly train station and mall with the Balmoral Hotel looming behind it, a grand old institution of the city. 5-star deluxe. You'll want to take a walk through the elegant residential neighborhoods of the new town. Recapping on the map where we've been, the Royal Mile, the Castle, and Princes Street, now walking several blocks through the beautiful new town. Called the New Town, it was created in the late 18th century to provide housing for the growing community, which had gotten very crowded in the old town. We're now in the new town at Charlotte Square, which is considered the best preserved 18th century neighborhood in Edinburgh, the masterpiece of Robert Adam. And one highlight of the square is this Georgian House Museum, which features original architecture and authentic furnishings from 1795. You see, this Georgian style of architecture, so called because it was developed in the 18th century, when there were 4 kings named George ruling England. This is a great place for just taking a stroll. Here's a busy lineup. What could these people all be waiting for? Oh, it's a used book sale. Well, Edinburgh is famous as a literary capital and a center for the fine arts, as are on display at the National Gallery of Scotland. For a relatively small museum, it has an astonishing collection of the highest quality. How about works by Bernini or the great Spanish painter Velázquez, famous for his realism? And you'll find major works by Rubens and Rembrandt. If you like art history, then the National Gallery is another must place to visit. Admission is free, but the collection is priceless. You've got masterworks by Rembrandt, Gauguin, and other great painters. And the setting in which they are displayed is just perfect in this grand old building that opened in 1828 with the walls nicely colored to complement the works of art. And there's sofas, and the scale is just not very large. You can see this collection in 1 hour in a rush or 2 hours more leisurely. You'll also find Impressionism and Post-Impressionism, Monet, Degas, Seurat, Pissarro, Cézanne. It just goes on and on. A major American artist, Frederick Church, with Niagara Falls. And they have regular gallery talks in which you can tag along with an art curator and learn about some of the paintings in great detail. The museum also has an excellent website in which you can see their collection in high-resolution images and read informative text that describes them. Its neoclassical building is located on what's called the Mound at the west end of Princes Street Gardens. You'll also want to see more of the Royal Mile, especially in the evening, and a big church, both of which are coming up soon. But first, a major museum. You can get a big dose of history in the National Museum of Scotland, which is loaded with natural history and cultural artifacts. This is one of the top museum experiences you can find in the British Isles. As they say in their excellent website, this diverse collection will take you on a journey of discovery through the history of Scotland and around the world, taking in the wonders of nature, art, design, and fashion, science and technology, all under one roof. The website has a museum map you can download and a lot of information about your visit, and they also have an app for your mobile device that can help guide you through it. Like in the other government museums of Great Britain, the admission is free. Originally, there were 2 separate museum buildings on this property, and then they were joined together to merge into the National Museum. Previously, the Museum of Scotland had the Scottish antiquities, culture, and history, and the Royal Museum had collections about technology and natural history and world cultures. But now it's all together under one roof, giving you a comprehensive look at the world. It combines an old-fashioned approach to display of cramming lots of things into a space, along with the more modern layouts, so you get a great variety. And it's huge, as you can see from the outside of the building, which opened in 2011 and has continued to expand internally as they add galleries. The first museum opened in 1888 on this site. One of the popular displays is the Millennium Clock Tower that plays music and moves and displays the best and worst of human culture inside it with little statues. The ethnographic collection about world cultures is so superb that, for example, this Hawaiian feather cloak is bigger and grander than any such cloaks on exhibit in the Hawaiian Islands today, along with wood carvings from Africa and galleries devoted to ancient Egypt and East Asia. It's like taking a trip around the world in this one building. The science and technology galleries include some old trains and bicycles, there's steam engines, there's a model of the CERN accelerator, and there are several restaurants that you can have a nice meal at in the museum, on the terrace overlooking the Grand Gallery and behind Boswell's Court, an old facade turned into the wall of the restaurant. You can also go up onto the roof. There's an outdoor terrace up there, and from the terrace you get a nice view looking across the city and especially over to the castle. While the castle is the most popular paid attraction in Scotland, this free museum is even more popular. It's the #1 visitor attraction in Scotland. The artifacts are nicely displayed in the glass cases in such a way that presents them almost as works of art rather than utilitarian objects. A few blocks over from the museum, you'll find one of the most famous and popular statues in town, Greyfriars Bobby. The legend holds that back in the 1850s, John Grey moved to Edinburgh and worked as a night watchman, accompanied by his little Skye Terrier, trudging through the old cobble streets of Edinburgh. After Mr. Grey died, Bobby sat faithfully at his gravesite for the next 14 years. And now he's buried in the same graveyard, a symbol of eternal fidelity. You can easily walk back from here to the center of the old town in about 10 minutes. It's just 500 meters away. An easy route is along Victoria Street, and as you look up, you'll see there's an upper level called Victoria Terrace that's a sidewalk you could also walk along, leading you right back to the Royal Mile. You'll always return to the Royal Mile, which is fascinating during the different times of day. And here we're coming late in the afternoon and early evening. Take a stroll along this grand street, which changes names 5 times along its course. Starting from west to east, it's called Castle Hill, Lawn Market, High Street, Canongate, and Abbey Strand. And altogether it's referred to as the Royal Mile. It has always been the backbone of Edinburgh. Origins of this street go back 800 years, with houses first built of wood until they were burned down by Henry VIII in the mid-16th century and later rebuilt in stone, became very crowded with population of 70,000 people, squeezing as many as 10 people into a single room. Now, of course, it's an upscale street with many shops and expensive apartments. Its side alleys were once considered slums, but are now looked at as fine examples of urban living, part of the pedestrian-friendly human scale of Edinburgh. Drawn Kirk stands high with its great steeple. Protestant reformer John Knox lived here, and his house is open as one of the small museums on the Royal Mile. Chesil's Court was created in the mid-18th century as an open space surrounded by mansions, and now there are Airbnb flats that you can rent here. Very convenient location right along Canongate. And we continue on down towards the lower end now of the Royal Mile. These folks were celebrating some kind of a festivity at their shop in a private open party on the sidewalk. And now we've arrived at the end of the world, or at least a pub called the World's End. We've reached the limits of medieval Edinburgh because this is where the wall ran around town, with a gate connecting High Street with Canongate. Early evening is another perfect time to be strolling along the Royal Mile. People are out, the shops are open, the pubs are happening. It's really something to see. Because the Royal Mile is the most attractive single place that you'll keep coming back to in your visit to Edinburgh, it's nice to get a hotel that's on or near the Royal Mile. Now, there's only a couple of hotels that are right in the center of this high street. There's the Inn on the Mile and the Radisson Blu, which is where we've been staying on our visits to Edinburgh. The Radisson is a 4-star property in a historic building that's been thoroughly modernized, of course, very comfortable. And they include a big buffet breakfast in most of the hotel room rates. It makes a great way to start your day. And in our case, we're winding down our visit to Edinburgh. We've enjoyed 3 days here, and now it's time for us to move along in our tour of the British Isles. We have a whole series of movies about this trip in our collection, taking you to Bath and York and London, the Lake District, and up here in Edinburgh, and also over to Ireland, where we visit Galway and Dingle, down to Kinsale and Dublin. Look for it all in our collection. Closing with a little rock and roll bagpipe fusion music that somehow symbolizes the old and new of this grand city. We've got a lot more movies about the British Isles featuring England, Scotland, and Ireland. Look for them in our collection.